Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business, their own individual business sectors, and finally what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. But before I start my 200th episode of the business breakfast briefers, I just want to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And I really couldn't do the show without them. Okay, let's meet the panel. We have Andy Bates, he's the Chief Financial Officer at Gloucestershire College, responsible for 800 staff, over 10,000 students across 4 sites in Gloucestershire, and a turnover of 40 million. The college has never been busier, with numbers of students on the rise, but what are they studying and why? And we'll also find out hairdressers, hospitality apprenticeships have they been hit by the government's national insurance and minimum wage rises? So great to catch up with Andy. We've got Jason Ivey, the MD of Gloucestershire Airport. The airport is being sold off by its owners, Gloucestershire and Cheltenham Borough Council. The airport has been accused of trying to get rid of its hobby flyers. So we'll find out his thoughts on that. And obviously the sale is coming down the tracks, and we'll find out the latest news on that as well. So thanks for joining us, Jason. We've got Keith Graham. He's the owner of The Famous in Cheltenham. He moved his original business, menswear, from Gloucester to Cheltenham over 3.5 years ago during COVID, and bought up The Famous name. He's been in retail for over 50 years. So we'll find out what it's really like to work, in Cheltenham, in retail and on the high street. So looking forward to his views on that. And finally, never last not least, we've got Ian Meany, Director of the Forest Economic Partnership. He's the board member of Gloucestershire County Council Economic Growth Board. He's ex-editor of the Citizen Echo and Western Daily Press. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Okay, let's see what's making the headlines today, please. Don't forget, if you like this show, please like, share and subscribe. Can you all see the papers? Great stuff. The Sun. Arise, Sir Bex. Is he going to get his knighthood at long last? And Lady Posh. The Daily Telegraph. Reform civil war over burqa ban. The Financial Times. Trump and Xi dial down rhetoric and agree new round of trade talks. The Guardian. Labour bans bonuses for 10 water bosses amidst worsening pollution. The Times. Migration could force reform of rights treaty. The Eye, UK water bosses finally banned amid public anger at sewage prices. The Daily Mail, Russia blames UK for drones attack on jets. And the Mirror, will end corridor care. The Daily Express, never forget their sacrifice. And the Daily Star, blast orders. Okay, that seems to be what's making the headlines today. It's a real mixed bag, isn't it? Let's bring you in on this, Ian. So what have you picked out for us?
Okay, three key stories for me. The Daily Mail, sensation as must as Trump is in the Epstein files. I mean, this is a couple with an amazing bromance after the few months with Elon Musk brought in to actually revolutionize government departments. Now they've fallen out big time. I mean, this is a major situation in terms of Trump. And I think it'd be interesting on how he hits back. The other thing that I'm very interested in is the reform civil war over the burqa ban. This is the Daily Telegraph. One of their MPs raised this in the Commons. Why she should do that, I don't know personally. But the chairman, Youssef, has suddenly resigned over this. Puts a big question, I think, Mark, over reform. We know that Farage is a great communicator with some great ideas, but you can't have too many situations like this. And the last thing is the story in the Eye you mentioned. UK water bonuses finally banned amid public anger at sewage scandal. I think it's utterly appalling that, if you run a company like some of these water companies, that you could even consider giving yourself a bonus.
I've always thought it's crazy we actually privatised the water companies in the first place, but that's a completely different conversation, I suppose. Thanks ever so much, Ian. I think you're right. Musk and Trump is the story of the day. I mean, they are sensationally falling out. And the thing about it is, I think Musk is the only person that Trump is really scared of. He knows what's in the cupboard, doesn't he? He knows what's under the bonnet, and God knows what he can actually dig up because he's been there all the time. Who knows what he's picked up? Um, but it's going to be fascinating over the next couple of days. Let's bring you in, Keith. What have you picked out from the papers, please?
Well, I echo what Ian said about the water companies. I and agree with your comments. I think they should never have been privatised in the first place. I think it's an absolute scandal. The amount of money that's gone in bonuses and shareholder dividends is ridiculous when they can't provide a proper service. Going on to the Trump Musk debacle, I think it'll be very interesting what Musk comes out with. I think he's got all of the dirt on Trump, and I think when he comes out and says it, I think people will start to believe it. Trump's got away with so much. He's quite a despicable person, in my opinion, and should never have been elected president of the United States. And what he's doing to world trade is beyond belief. But hopefully Musk can bring him down a peg or two and he can start listening to that. Those are the two main stories. The other thing, Madeleine McCann's situation, I think that poor girl will never be found. And I think the parents should have taken more responsibility because they were the ones that left her in that flat on their own with the door open while they were dining at a restaurant 50 meters or 100 meters away. I just think it's scandalous. And I think general public, if they'd done that, I think the police would have taken much firmer action against them. Why they've never done that, I never know.
No, it's a story. I'll be honest with you, it's 18 years. 18
18
years,
years.
and when do they stop investigating this? I know it's terrible, but it is. It's hey, it must be dreadful for the parents,
Well,
but
every
even
time
so.
you see every time you see the pictures of that young girl on the television like you did yesterday, it's just heartbreaking, isn't it, really?
Without a shadow of a doubt. No, thanks for bringing that to the table, Keith. Okay, bring you in, Jason. Great to see you again, mate. Looking like the X Factor winner there. What what have you picked out for the papers, please?
Okay, so I'm trying to stay with an aviation theme. So Wizz Air shares, not really sexy, but Wizz Air shares have fall by 28%. Wizz Air are the sort of one of the budget airlines along with EasyJet, and this is a result of the Pratt and Whitney engine fiasco. Basically, they've used some poor manufacturing techniques. 483 million wiped off the share price. So, but it's not all bad news because the CEO is slashing prices for consumers to try and attract new customers or retain existing customers. So get booking on Wizz Air. The other one I picked up was Ed Miliband. He's entered a fight. He's running the race for net zero. So zonal electricity prices. That's the latest one. They reckon it's going to be the new Brexit. Effectively, it's dividing the UK up into 10 electricity zones to try and work on sort of supply and demand. But interesting, I didn't realise till I started looking at this. The UK has spent £500 million this year in turning the wind farms off because of oversaturation, which is just pretty staggering. But yet we still have the highest electricity prices in the G7, 36.39 pence a kilowatt. There you go.
They spend what? Sorry, £500 million
500
turning off.
million turning off the wind farms because there's too much electricity being put into the grid. So they reckon it's another 500 million to come as well, which is pretty staggering stuff.
What I don't understand is why Wizz Air, at £483 million loss, why he hasn't got a big massive bonus. If he was working for the water companies, he'd get a big massive bonus for that.
He'd get paid well for that, wouldn't he? Yeah, no.
Okay, let's bring Andy in. Hi, Andy. Great to see you. Thanks ever so much for joining the show. What have you picked out for the papers, please?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of things, Mark. First one for me is the M&S story and the hackers, which I think we all know about. But new information's emerging all the time on this, and I think we'll continue to see things being announced on this as we go forward. The latest is that the hackers now sent the CEO personal emails to his personal email address, threatening him personally. And I think this is going to run and run. I mean, we know that M&S announced to the city £300 million is going to impact their profit, which is absolutely massive. And I think as we go forward, we'll see companies taking cyber attacks much more seriously in the future. I've been talking to some businesses about this, and the risk around cyber attacks is so much more now than maybe if M&S chose the wrong colour of trousers or something that season, or the wrong style of shoes. And it'd be interesting to get Keith's view on this. The money they'd have lost would be insignificant to the amount that they've lost due to this cyber attack and that. So whether big companies are investing into their infrastructure and cyber infrastructure as much as other parts of the business, I think that this is really going to start to look at changing, because ultimately M&S is a tech company now. It's not a design sort of clothes company. It's a tech company, and are they putting their investment into that tech and into that cyber security as much as maybe the other parts of the business? And just briefly, when we're seeing that at the college, we've got hundreds and hundreds of students wanting to get into cyber and tech. However, getting companies to offer those traineeships, those apprenticeships in cyber and IT, we're oversubscribed. So we'll get 50 to 100 learners for every vacancy there is in cyber. So I think companies are going to have to start investing in developing that cyber talent through apprenticeships. But that's that one I thought was really interesting. The second one is, is a nice story for those families that really need it. So announced today that free school meals will be extended to further 500,000 children. And I think that's really, really important. We know that children are turning up at school hungry, not having breakfast, and that really impacts their learning. And we really know that if we are going to bridge that wealth gap divide, we know that education is a massive driver in that. So yeah, really, really pleased to see that 500,000 children will be able to start the day with a full belly, so they can start learning. So yeah, those are the two that I've picked up, Mark. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you very much. We've sort of covered the papers now. I'm going to go over to you, Jason. I'd like to talk to you about the airport, because there's been obviously that accusation in the airport that they're trying to drive out the small sort of hobby. You guys in the management team are trying to drive out the small hobby flyers. What is the situation there now?
Yeah, that's complete misrepresentation, Mark. That's not the case at all. So 91% of our movements are made up by what we call GA, general aviation, so the lighter aircraft. They are an integral part to our operation, and they will continue to be so in the future. What I've said, and it's probably been taken out of context, is that we'd like to attract more business jets, and the simple factor is yield. They're roughly 16 to 1 profit margin compared to a light aircraft. Now, I'm not saying that business jets are the silver bullet answer. They're not. But a few more business jets based at Gloucester Airport would certainly help. But the GA community, the hobby flyers, as the article referred to, they are integral to the operation now and for the future.
The big thing, let's be honest about this. The council, we know Cheltenham and Gloucester Borough councils are broke. All the councils are broke. And the airport loses money. And it has to be sold, doesn't it, in order to make it survive. And we all want to see it survive as a viable airport.
Yeah, absolutely. We published a 2.1 million loss last year. So to put that into context, that's £40,000 a week. We have to do something. We can't sustain that. And whether the councils can afford it, I think it'd be very difficult for them to justify that to their constituents when their primary role is to provide local authority services. So I applaud the councils for sort of joining forces and agreeing the sale. We're very close to that now. So there's a decision on the 26th of June with the Gloucester City Council to a final vote effectively, and then we could hopefully announce the preferred bidder. And then the due diligence phase will start, so that we're looking roughly 12 to 14 weeks. With all things being equal, keys handed over sometime towards the end of the year. So it's a pivotal moment for the airport, Mark, and I think there's a bit of sale anxiety for all of us, myself, my team, the tenants. We want to know who are the new owners, what exactly it's going to look like. So, but it has to happen, and I think it will.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Jason, making that really clearly. I'm going to bring you in now, Keith. One of the stories that we had this week, a pretty sad story actually, was about the Find closing. And it goes to show something about the high street. How are you finding it? Let's talk about your business first of all, because you're in menswear.
Yeah. The high street for the small businesses is being devastated. We had a triple whammy with this government, with rise in minimum wage, which they took credit for, but they don't pay it, the small businesses, and owners pay it. The government get a 20% tax take off that because they're above the minimum wage, because they haven't above the tax threshold, because they haven't raised that in 5 years. We've had a big increase in national insurance, which is, and then the worst thing of all, the government reduced substantially the subsidy on business rates. So most businesses have had about a 40% increase in their basic costs, and it's no wonder they're not surviving. The Find, an absolutely excellent restaurant, the guy that ran that works his butt off to provide a really good service, very, very nice place to go and get a good cup of coffee, good food, but he's just unsustainable. He tried about 18 months, 2 years ago, to expand his business. He expanded within the business building he's in. He wanted to take over next door and really put his heart and soul into it. And this government has just taken the ground from under his feet. And if you look at the promenade at the present time, we've now got 7 empty properties again on the promenade. That's nearly as many as we had during COVID. The government have got to start taking this seriously, because a lot of young businesses young people come into retail early in their lives. It's a way of getting them into the workforce before they move on to bigger and better things. And if we're going to devastate that industry, I predict that within 5 years there'll be no good small independent retailer left in the UK, because they won't be able to afford to run their businesses. You're basically running it just to pay tax to the government, and they don't seem to understand. And it's always down the line, we're going to reform this, we're going to do that, but they never get round to it. All talk and no action.
And also on the hospitality trade, it is a difficult business to be in. I mean, Andy, the college trains chefs and people in the trade, and I've heard really, really terrible stories about hairdressers, with apprentices can't afford their young people.
So many of these businesses, Mark, are on a knife edge with their businesses, and lots of restaurants are now even closing and not opening 6 days a week anymore. If you look at Park Lane in Regent Street, a beautiful fish restaurant, I mean, they only open 3-4 days a week now. They don't open full time, and this has an impact on their workforce and everything else as well, because if they're not doing the hours, they're not earning the money, and it seems like this government doesn't really care. Now this sector of the commerce within the country is a massive sector and a big employee. I just don't understand the mentality of the people in power, the government. They don't seem to understand. They're very keen on taking all their freebies. Starmer's had over 100,000 quid of free gifts, which Rachel Reeves just recently had new free tickets to a concert, even after all this scandal broke about the freebies, but she didn't seem to have any remorse about it whatsoever. Why don't they get into the real world and see what's happening? But honestly, it is very, very tough at the present time, and unless something's done about it, I can see it being devastated. It's just shocking, and like you said, for all the people being trained in the colleges and everything else, it's absolutely shocking.
Okay, I'm going to bring you in now, because obviously you deal with lots of businesses from all over the county, like I do. What's your take on it all?
I agree with Keith totally. I think retail is in a devastating situation. I mean, we see pubs, restaurants only open 2-3 days a week. The opportunity for young people is being lost. And actually, this government, I've been reading a story in the Independent today saying that UK industry needs radical reform plan, warn MPs. I don't get any impression of a real industrial strategy anywhere. We're supposed to be getting this from the government. I know the Economic Growth Board have been looking forward to this. I'd like to see what they're going to do to help business. What are the biggies? The biggest is business rates. Absolutely crazy situation. And Keith will tell you that. But we don't seem to be fighting for our businesses. The energy costs, highest in Europe. Absolute madness. There are basic things here, Mark. This is not rocket science, but we don't seem to get it. They don't get business.
I don't think they understand business because they've never worked
Should,
in it.
should
Anyway,
I,
let's bring. Let's sorry.
Mark,
Let's
can I
bring
just
Andy.
make Mark? Can I make one point on that? Tesco
Yeah.
this week announced a huge cut in
Oh,
hours across all their stores to save over £300 million because of the huge increase in costs they've had. That's going to impact all the employers that work for them, which will won't get overtime or their normal hours or anything else, and they'll get a reduction in pay. I mean, that's one of the biggest companies in retail hospitality, and they're cutting out across the whole board of their estate hours, so people, because they've got to reduce their costs, and they're reducing their costs by over 300 million.
and I suppose if they reduce their costs, then they're not going out spending in restaurants, are they?
Totally.
Because they're going to get less wages. They won't go to the
They
hospitality. They
haven't got
won't
the
not be able to go to your shop.
They haven't got the disposable income. Their hours are cut. They get less pay. They barely can pay their general costs. Never mind going out buying meals or things like that, which is discretionary expense. You know,
Okay,
this government. What Ian said about the government having no business strategy is 100% right. They came into power. They had 15 years to prepare for this, and they had no plan whatsoever. And they still haven't got a plan.
Okay, let's bring Andy in. Thanks ever so much for that, Keith. Andy, your take on it is obviously, you're seeing these young people coming in. I've heard of hairdressers, and obviously you work in the construction industry. What's your take on it? Is it feeding through to
Yeah,
the
it is.
young
I mean,
people there in the college?
we start about 700 new apprentices each year at the college across a range of subject areas, and that's remained pretty flat, to be honest, over the last couple of years. But we definitely saw a decline in new inquiries when the NI announcement was made, and I agree with the others on the panel. I don't think it's rocket science. You don't need a big business strategy. Businesses just want to be able to get on with it themselves. They want some stability, they want some certainty, and whopping a load of extra costs on them is not going to help businesses grow. There is the issue we have, obviously, and Keith raised a really good point, is that students need that face-to-face. They need that face-to-face mentoring. And as we see more things go online, whether that's working from home, whether that's online retail, the students don't get that face-to-face mentoring from those senior members of staff. They don't learn. And working from home, I don't know if you could imagine in your 20s working from home every day. I mean, I had a great time going into work during my 20s and meeting people, learning those social skills, learning those communication skills. And the more that we lose those face-to-face jobs, I'm really worried how that'll impact the young people as they learn and go forward. Yeah, I mean, specifically on hair, I know you mentioned that, Mark. Yeah, the issue we've had there is that salons have been laying off staff and then self-employed. So if you look at the hairdressers around Cheltenham now, there'll be big signs up saying rent a chair from us, self-employed. So they are just turning into middlemen because they can't afford to employ staff with the NI increases. So where that's going to leave us in a few years' time, I don't know, because we're not training enough hairdressers because the chains aren't the stores can't afford to train the staff up. So yeah, big issues there.
I mean, this is what I hear all the time. I'm going to bring you in, Jason. Obviously, I know you're a sort of very different type of business, but at the same time, the national insurance contributions, the rise of wages, everything else like that, business rates, that must have hit you guys as well, running the airport.
Yeah, hugely, and it's something that the tenants mention to me on a regular basis, and they're right. The business rates are just, well, it's already been said, they are ridiculous, and something has to be done. But it doesn't. I'm not getting that sense of something is being done. The lack of strategy. Yeah, it's a quite a worrying time, isn't it?
Totally agree.
Well, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I'm hearing this all the time, and my big worry, it's right across the board. The only people who seem to be doing very well at the moment is if you work in pharmaceuticals or if you're in defence or the aviation industry. And thankfully, we do have a lot of them here, or cyber. Let's be honest about it, cyber as well. AI coming down the track. So I think that's a bit of a big worry for lots of people. Will the same jobs still exist in 10 years' time? I'm going to bring you back in, Keith, because again, you mentioned about the high street itself and Cheltenham itself. Can there be more to be done there, or is the high street had its day?
Well, unless you promote it properly and get the right mix of shops, you won't get the footfall coming back to Cheltenham. But the other big thing for Cheltenham, which is going to impact it hugely, is the new Cotswold Outlet Centre at Tewkesbury. I mean, they don't seem to be taking any notice of that whatsoever, but it's going to be enormous. And that's going to have a huge effect on Cheltenham, which is going to hit the retail sector within Cheltenham. And I know that's a local problem, but it's going to have a retail. What we need to do is value our high streets. But I mean, I had customers come into my shop on Wednesday and they said they were visitors from outside. One was from Germany and the other one was from Canada. And both of them said to me, "Crikey, isn't your high street quiet?" And these are visitors are noticing this. Local people aren't coming into town shopping like they used to. Yet my costs this year have gone up over 40%. To run my business, and my trade has declined. So we're now having to look at how we restructure our business, which I've been doing since February, and I've had to. Otherwise, I would have gone out of business like many other people are contemplating, because I just wouldn't be able to make a sustainable profit to make the business worthwhile. But we've got to promote it and attract the right type of businesses into the town to make it interesting. We don't want just coffee shops or charity shops or things like that. You need a diversity. I mean, there used to be lots of really nice ladies' clothes shops in Cheltenham. There's very few now. If you look at it, it's very, very difficult. And the small companies now find it very difficult to compete against the big companies because they've got the economies of scale. They can make much smaller profits in their shop, but they do it over a much bigger range of outlets, and therefore they can make their profit that way. And they have a much bigger online presence as well because they've got the resources to do that. We need to rethink it completely and value it, because it's good for people to get out of their homes, to meet people and have a bit of therapy. We can't lock it away.
I had we did the show last week. What was really, really telling from that particular one, we talked about the charity sector. And I never realised the knock-on effect of Vinted is having on the charity sector. And obviously, if companies don't have enough money, and they're actually starting to close charity shops now. When the coffee shops shut and the cafe and all the other and the charity shops shut, I mean, there won't be a high street.
It's just what Jason said, or Andy, one of the two. I'm saying my grandson, my eldest grandson, has just started work. He did maths and computer science at Manchester, and he's gone to work for an AI company writing software for them. He's working from home. He's 22 years of age. This is his first job, and he's working from home. It's absolutely ridiculous. See, the number of times he rings me up during the day because he's there stuck on his own doing this work. I find it incredible. Just like your other panelists said, when we were both young, I started work in local government. You went to the office, you interacted with all your other members of staff. You made your lifelong friendships there when you first started work. If you're working from home, you're not doing that. And it has a big effect on mental health as well. And then we cause more and more problems with all of this. We just need some joined up thinking in this country, and we don't seem to have any at all.
Let's bring it in. You mentioned mental health. We're kind of running out of time, but Andy, very, very briefly on the mental health side of, how important is it? I mean, let's be honest. We know it's very important, but
so I mean, we're seeing very complex issues with our students. Some of our students, knock-on effects from COVID. Really, the impact of social media. This generation are the first generation to grow with that. Social media, which is having massive impact. But I think the issue is, and going back to Keith's point, there's no the government aren't able to quantify what this long-term impact of 21, 22-year-olds working from home is. So until we need to talk about it and understand what that long-term impact is, but so much of the government policy is very short-term, isn't it? And what's happening now, and they're like, well, this will be someone else's problem down the line somewhere. But I do believe it's going to impact our creativity as a nation, our ability to be entrepreneurs, and how we create great leaders of the future if people are just sat at home doing coding on their own from the age of 21, 22. And the issue is as well is that, I mean, we deliver all of our courses face to face, whether that's our university courses or our 16 to 18. But so many universities now are still delivering online lectures. So people are going to university and they're sat in their dorms online. So yeah, it's a big issue, Mark. But I think it's one of those that people are just going to kick it down the road, unfortunately.
I'm just to say also, the young people don't get the chance for internships. We used to, here at Punchline, we used to give, 30 odd kids I did over we helped over the years with internships. And some of them gone on to do fantastic stuff. And I did a talk at Crip School only Wednesday this week about careers in journalism, marketing and everything like that. And one young lady came up to me afterwards and asked me for an internship. And could I do something? And we don't do them anymore because we all work from home, and you can't have a young person. I know for a fact it wouldn't work for them sitting at home all the time.
They need to be pass our safeguarding if a young student came and sat in your house, Mark, on your own with
definitely. Definitely. That's what I'm trying to say.
And that's the problem. This is replicated across society, But again, the government want more apprenticeships. They want more people, but then they're not addressing it. Yeah.
Well, they want more apprentices, and then they yank up the amount of money we're going to pay for a young 18-year-old who actually, not being funny, has no life skills at this particular moment.
Yeah.
Fortunately, guys, we are kind of running out of time. Does anybody else want to throw one last bit in there? Ian, Jason, anything else you'd like to add to this?
I'd just like to add to the fact your 200th show. I've been around here in journalism for 20 odd years. You do a great job in the lack of normal traditional media. You hold people to account, and that's really important. That's what's missing in terms of business. Business is a big story. I've always believed that. It's a great story. We all work at it. And you're doing a great job here, and I welcome that.
Yeah. Well, that's very kind of you. Thanks so much, Ian. I really appreciate that. Guys, okay, just very quickly, we are over time, but just 30 seconds each. What have you picked out from the papers? Jason, I'll start with you. Sorry, pick of the punchlines, not papers. We've done that.
Yeah, pick of the punchline. Okay, really quickly, Mark. Tewkesbury Borough Council given Chase Commercial permission to develop 11,500 square metres of industrial estate at Bishop's Cleeve, creating 468 new jobs. Great news.
Okay, Keith, pick up the punchlines.
Well, I would like to say about the work that Ian's doing on the commercial development of Gloucestershire, with all of the new routes that they're doing, the Crickley Hill one, the Junction 10. They're creating the environment so Gloucestershire can attract more business. And I think it's really important we do that, because you have to put the infrastructure in before you can develop the businesses. And I'll be honest with you, I think Gloucestershire County Council over the last few years has taken a very positive attitude. They've managed to get a lot of money out of the government to do this, and I think it's good for the future for business growth within Gloucestershire, which hopefully then can spill over into the retail sector where people have more money to spend.
Okay, Andy, thank you very much. Andy, pick up the punchlines.
Yeah, a lot of talk about Junction 10. Well, I've been in Gloucestershire for about 12 years now, and it's been talked about for that long. So Junction 10 finally got approval from the Secretary of State. So that'd be great. That hopefully unlock then the Golden Valley development. So hopefully we'll get things moving, which is great news.
Okay, thank you for that. And Ian, pick up the punchlines.
Junction 10, like Andy, we've heard a lot about the Golden Valley. I've always been a bit sceptical, but this is the start. And let's hope because they now open up to some real plans here for what we're going to get.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't move Junction 9A quick as well. That's the kind of rumour going around the wheel at this particular moment. Okay, unfortunately, guys, that's all we've got time for today. I just want to thank my fantastic panel for joining us. Thank you ever so much for coming on the show. Also, for my wonderful sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. If you like the show, please like, share and subscribe. And we'll be back again next week. But until then, remember, it's all in the punchline. Thanks ever so much. Bye.